Welcome back to the channel. I am Brandon and I am like a new signing for Arsenal. Welcome to my Arsenal related YouTube channel. I do have another channel on YouTube. It is on my hat. It is at HallYT. I do travel and product review videos over there, so I get to travel quite a bit for work and for vacation. So I do everywhere I go, I do a review of the resort or wherever we're staying, and then I also do product reviews of weird stuff. So if you're into any of that, go check that out. I put a lot of heart and soul into that channel, so yeah. But I've always wanted to do Arsenal related content. There's a lot of amazing Arsenal related content creators out there, so certainly check them out as well. But put my hat in the game. I am not a football tactician, so played football for quite many years, got up through college or university level. Certainly know how to play, know a lot about the game, but there are so many other creators out there that'll be very tactical with their nous, understanding the structure, how formations change, why they did things. I don't live so much into that world. I very much enjoy the game. I understand a lot of it, but there are way better people out there for that. So I'm going to be taking more. I'm very interested in not only the team, how the team perform, obviously winning and losing, but very much the leadership aspect, Mikel Arteta, how the club is run, things around that nature, because I'm very into leadership myself. I get to study it every day and practice it as well. I want to talk today around the first little snippet we got of the All or Nothing that was in the dressing room before the Norwich game, which was coming off of the first 3 losses of the season, obviously super low spirits. So I want to dive into a little bit of that. My opinion is very much around the culture change that Arteta is going through with not only the team, but I think Arsenal as a whole, as an organization. And what that looks like, I think where they came from, where they're going, and just have a little bit of insight on that. These are all my personal opinions. You can think I'm totally full of shit. I'm good with that as well, but I believe there's something here that we can talk about that's pretty amazing that I think is going to set us up quite well for the future. So let's dig into some of that. Let's roll the bumper right now. We'll dive right into that. So just as a caveat, we are going to be doing all or nothing reactions, obviously, to the episodes, deep diving into those, and then I will be doing match reactions as well. I do have merch related reviews as well, because reviews is very much close to my heart, because I do those on my other channel. So anything that I buy from Arsenal, I will do a review for as well, because everything's pretty expensive. So it is important to make sure you know what you're buying from a size perspective. I cover my normal build, what sizes I buy, and how it fits as well. So if you're interested in that, you can check me out more. All right, so I have a lot of intimacy with leadership qualities, culture changes, things like that. Those are what I want to talk about, because that was a real highlight for me. So I'm a notes person. I pre-write all of my notes before I make these videos. These are things that are in my head that I want to make sure I don't miss. So you'll see me referring to my notes, just letting you know I don't want to miss anything. So that's what I'm bringing back. So let's talk about this dressing room kind of, I'm calling it dressing room transparency clip. So a couple things I have here. Let's talk about what Arteta walked into, right? So we were a mess. We were absolutely in shambles. We were segregated. We had cliques. We were rotting from the inside. We were underperforming. We were vulnerable. And in the vulnerable space, right, we had people taking advantage of, we're a very large club. We were extremely vulnerable. We were taken advantage of by, we'll say, backroom staff. I'm not going to get into specifics, but we all know what I'm talking about if you're an Arsenal fan. So if you think about what we walked into and how bad things were, they were terrible. I'm sure the dressing room wasn't great. The backroom staff had much to be desired. That had to do some sort of an overhaul. So walking into a very difficult situation that in a lot of those situations and organizations, you're not in the spotlight while you're trying to do what you're doing, right? So as a leader, a lot of the times you can go about these processes and these actions without taking questions every week from the press, everything not being in the press, players not talking about things. Employees normally don't go to the press to talk about that. But you have players, you have social media, you have all the things that wrap around these teams. Everything is highlighted. So you're trying to change something that's rotting in the midst of everybody watching, which has to be extremely difficult. So just take that into consideration and realize where we are today moving into the 22-23 season and where we were. And it's quite impressive to me. To change a culture, let's talk about, where we were, where we are now. How does that happen? How do you change a culture? So if you're a person that doesn't really believe in the non-tangibles, the fluffy stuff, like I am an absolute believer in that from multiple accounts. I work on it day to day. And I believe it truly does make a difference, especially from an organizational perspective. We'll get into some of that. So to change a culture, you need, to me, two ingredients. You need consistency in your message, in your philosophy, in your approach. All of those things have to be consistent. And then you need time. But you have to be consistent over a long period of time to reach results, right? And that's something I think Arteta's doing quite well. If you think about, things around that he's talked about. Consistency in his message. I know he's had the non-negotiables. Now, how has he nailed those non-negotiables every single time? No, I also don't believe it, but you were going to have some flux in that. But consistency in the overall message and the approach to how people are treated, leaving, coming into the club, new people, people that have been there for a long time, how they treat each other, breaking down those cliques, obviously certain players leaving, being forced to leave, getting players out because of the actions. All that stuff is a very consistent message, even if it's not nailed on every time. Remember, most occupations aren't in the limelight all the time. People will screw up. We are human beings. Even in leadership, you don't have all the answers all the time. So time, as the culture evolves to what you want, the ones who don't fit will either weed themselves out or will be removed. I think we've seen plenty of that, right? Edu actually talked about that recently, like players who don't want to be there, aren't acting the way we want, aren't fitting our culture. It's actually a hindrance if you don't get them out of that space. That's that culture thing. When you're setting the culture and you're setting your precedents and it's evolving towards what you're looking for, the people who don't fit it will weed themselves out. So in the dressing room clip, I want to talk about that specifically. What is Arteta actually pushing? I've heard some insight around like the message totally didn't make sense. Like realize that you're in a moment. Does everybody remember they're being filmed in those specific moments? What message you're trying to get across? Like it doesn't always work perfectly all the time, especially when you're in a passion state. So, give a little bit of grace there. So to me, there's a couple of things that are coming out here. So when he's talking about his past with the open heart surgery, the issues he had when he was a child, things like that, we're talking about humility. We're talking about transparency, and we're talking about protection, right? He ended the message with, I will protect you. You guys go out and play. No matter what happens, I will protect you from what's going on outside of this dressing room, this club, whatever else. So I thought that was really powerful. Remember, in this state, before the Norwich game, coming off of 3 losses, he talked about where he was. Remember on that graph of the 0 to 10, 0 to 10? That kind of graph, I think, was mixed with like a, because he talked about high performing, and that's usually in like a 4-quadrant setup where you have like your high performers and your people who get along. You have your high performers that don't get along with people, and then don't get along, don't high perform, and you have those like 4 different quadrants. Maybe it was some of that. I don't know. I was trying to figure out exactly what he was looking for on the X and Y axis. But either way, he was in a very bad space after the 3 losses. And he even said that in the media, he had like a great week of training. And this is what he was referring to that brought him up to a very high positive outlook. So before that, he was in a very low space, very insecure, and probably didn't want to be transparent. Didn't know, was not sure about himself, not sure about the team. Could he do it? He's, I'm sure, having all those insecurities. Insecurity is one of the biggest things I think that can really hurt leaders and leadership, because you aren't humble. You're worried about your job. You're worried about people taking your job. You're probably aggressive in areas you shouldn't be. You're hearing and seeing things that aren't really there. So insecurity can really hurt a strong leader, and to come out of that so strong and then be super transparent in that moment about your past, I think was really, really telling about where he wants to go with this team and be open and honest. So Really love that. I think he was trying to create a real connection with the team. I heard a great comment on this clip in the Arsenal Vision podcast. I'm a huge fan of that podcast, huge fan of the Arts blog as well. And they talked about, you can only pull those things out of the bags every so often. I thought that was a great comment because he's absolutely right. You can scream at people only a certain amount of times, and you can get super, super emotional and vulnerable only a certain amount of times. And then you kind of got to click back to your consistency, right? And kind of keep those modes. But you want to be transparent, right, to a point where you're transparent with the goals and how you're treating people and how you're setting those standards. So I thought that was a really great comment. So around the high performing teams, I want to talk about this a little bit. I don't think Arteta doesn't think high performing teams are just about stats and numbers. And I think that's kind of what he was getting at with the medical team. They do it because they love it. The high performing is culture based. And so you can have an amazing team that's crushing profit numbers, crushing revenue numbers, crushing it out on the football pitch, but then they're all terrible to each other, right? Is that really a high performing team? To me, it's not. The piece you need is the togetherness and the non-tearing each other apart, the great culture. So I think his comments, his consistent comments this year and last year around cohesiveness, togetherness, one brain, everyone working for each other, fighting for each other. You can hear even the new signings talking about Gabriel Jesus talking about fighting for his teammates, fighting for the club, fighting for the badge. Like it's all together, together, together. I think Edu and Arteta are on that same message and pushing that not only with people coming in, but pushing that hard with the people that are currently here. As well. So, and another piece, taking all the team members on preseason for the US tour. Even people we all know, and I'm sure they know, are going to be leaving on loan. And someone even asked him about that. And he mentioned, I would be a hypocrite if I speak the way I do about culture, consistency, transparency, we're all in this together, and then leave people behind. So, message. He's consistent. He's getting time, right? Consistency and time. He's getting the culture and the result that he's looking for. So really, really great. So high performing teams to me and to what I think Arteta means is winning together, not at any cost. Very different. Not winning at any cost, winning together. So that is a high performing team to him. I think that's what he was trying to portray. Remember, these are all my opinions. You can think I'm an idiot. I'm totally cool with that as well. I think this summer we're starting to see some of these ideas come to fruition. I think the team's in a very good headspace. I think the people we brought in, even the people that were leaving that went on tour, like everybody's reasonably in a decent headspace. And obviously there's some tears, there's some things going on. You're never going to get it all perfect. You're still going to have people who don't fit the mold, but they will weed themselves out. A solid culture. Okay, so I want to talk about why a solid culture is important. And this is really for the people who don't believe. I may have to replace my battery, so if I get janked out, I'll put another battery in and continue this, just to let you know. So why is a solid culture important? So it's a real asset to an organization, no matter it's a football team or a company. Culture is, to me, a very important asset. The reason it's so important is it's not something that everyone can repeat. So it is an extreme competitive advantage. And whether you're talking about said company or said club, it is something not everybody can do well because it takes consistency, time, a message, transparency, openness, vulnerability, all of the things we just spoke about, and it has to be very intentional. And so then once you get a good culture, it's a competitive advantage because you can't go buy a good culture. It is not something you can run out, go to another team and say, hey, I'll take your culture for 30 million and I'm going to go ahead and bring it in. I'm going to plop it in and it's going to fix, right? Culture is organic. It's consistent, it's a message, it's training, it's all of those things that you have to do, and it has to be systematic and deliberate. And then once you get it, it is a competitive advantage because it gives you that extra 10, 15%. I truly believe that happy people are gonna work harder, they're gonna be more efficient, they're gonna be pushing towards the goal. All of that stuff goes into, I think, a very strong culture. Once again, not everybody can do it, which is why the best coaches, the best managers get paid the biggest money and get tried to take into the biggest clubs, because being able to manage the dressing room and the surrounding support and the club as an organization, if you can get that nailed on, you are going to have a massive advantage on your team, on your competition. So yeah, I think the direction Arteta is moving, I think they're building something that is super, super special. And I think it's going to give us a competitive advantage for the future, moving into the future. The scary thing about culture is you can lose your pivotal person, which to me is the Arteta. Yeah, battery totally died. All right, so really excited about what Arteta and the team are building. I think the organization as a whole, even it's not just the players, the backroom staff, the entire club and organization seems to be on the same message, which that's important. It can't be one message for the players and then one message for the backroom. I think the test of the culture is wrapped around the entire organization as a whole. Arsene Wenger was very good with that. He was a super empathetic person. I think he was so good at that for such a long time, but I think his philosophies, the game outgrew his approach and philosophy. And that's going to happen. You see that in organizations all the time. It's why you need succession planning. That's why you want to retire before you get to that point. It's not that you become completely irrelevant, but you're kind of irrelevant for what the new age needs to be motivated or what that looks like. But Wenger was able, I think, to last so long because of his empathetic approach towards people. He was so good at the deep thought, the critical thinking, reading the room, all of those things that I think make a strong culture and make a strong manager. So I'm very excited with what Arteta's building. The only scary thing with culture that I'm a little worried about is culture needs a pivotal leader to keep that consistent message, to stay transparent, to drive forward, to evolve as we need to evolve. Because, if you stand still, you're slowly dying, and you need to keep, not, reinventing yourself and pushing yourself forward. So managers, as we know, have shorter and shorter contracts in today's age. So I'm a little concerned. I think if the back room in the organization has a strong push, message, value, whatever that looks like, can you replace the manager and bring them into that culture? Probably, if the culture for the club is strong enough to do that. It wasn't post-Wenger. And to be fair, that culture was a little bit of a mess by the time he left. But, we saw the Emery. We see what's going on with Man United and other clubs and how that works. So I'm hoping they can establish that from a club organization standpoint. And if the manager would have to change in the future, they can pull that manager into the culture so that they continue down that road and that path. I think that's the long-term success of the club. If you leave it up to just the manager's ideals and they're set in stone, that could be a recipe, because obviously managers don't last forever. They're not all going to be Arsene Wenger's and Sir Alex Ferguson, so not in today's world at least. Yeah, so that's my reaction for the All or Nothing dressing room clip. I will be doing All or Nothing reactions as the episodes come out. I think there's going to be so many fascinating things to talk about, and we saw some of them in the trailer around Aubameyang, him talking about the Aubameyang leaving. I think that's going to go along with, if you can't fit the culture, you weed yourself out, or you will be let go. Right? We are going with a consistent message, no matter who your name is, Ozil, all the huge players that end up getting forced out of Arsenal. That's unacceptable. That is a non-negotiable for Arteta. And Edu said the same thing. You're either in or you will be out, and we will pay to make you leave. Don't think that's a right transfer philosophy, but you got to do what you got to do sometimes to clear house. And we were in a pretty terrible space. So I will have reactions to that. I will have match reactions as well. And I also have my merch reviews. So check all that out. As I always do in all my YouTube videos, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you just want to tell me to do a type of topic, certainly leave them in the comments. I answer all of my comments. I will do that as long as I possibly can. Because I know when I leave a comment for a creator, I love getting that feedback because it's something I'm very interested in. So I will always try to give that back to the audience. So that is all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a ton on things that may not be super interesting for people. Hopefully some people like it, but I'll be deep diving into, the approach, the coaching approach, the leadership, the organization, the club, also the players, how they're playing, things like that. So for more Arsenal content, certainly check me out again, but that'll be it for this video. I will catch you on the next one. Thanks.